A lot of Americans think shiitake is fairly new, but actually shiitake has been used and been around for about 2,200 years. Originally in China, it was originally found and grown on the shia tree. Some people call it chai tree. But the shia tree is very similar in molecular configuration to our white oaks. So shia is the Chinese tree. Taki is the Japanese word for mushroom. So the shiitake is a mushroom that grows on the shia tree. The Japanese and the Chinese both developed different strains over the centuries, and for a while the Japanese would kind of be in charge, and then they'd go back and forth. But after World War II, a lot of the Japanese and Koreans often that returned from the service brought the technical name is Lentinula adoides. Shiitake is scientifically known as Lentinula adoides. And many of these returning immigrants and veterans brought this back to the U.S. after War II in the 50s, 60s, and so it began to take some root in this culture. It really wasn't developed much until the 80s in any sort of a commercial way. But the Japanese invested a lot of money in the 70s and 80s in research and development. They were much smarter than we were in the sense that they invested the money in the future. And the way you do that is that you invest in research. And so they did a lot. Mori was one of the early Japanese researchers. A couple years ago, I met Akikawa in Pattaya, Thailand, at the International Medicinal Mushroom Conference. And many of these, Professor Yang was a guy who we read earlier on. He was Chinese. But the Japanese and Chinese researchers early on had known about the reputation as shiitake as being a medicinal mushroom. Good for long life, good for cholesterol problems, good for diabetics. Now there are other medicinal mushrooms, reishi, ganoderma, maitake, cordyceps, agaricus blazei. There are other medicinal mushrooms, but shiitake has been around as long as any of them, and it's the beta-glucans and the polysaccharides in all these medicinal mushrooms that seem to be the active ingredient. But the Japanese researchers, and particularly the big pharmaceuticals, Ajinomoto was one that we researched back in the early 90s. They have invested millions, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars in finding the effect that these medicinal mushrooms have on the immune system. And it's a part of their idea of preventive medicine, where you heal yourself before you get sick if you build your diet around the sort of beta-glucans, the sort of isoflavones, the fish. They get a lot of their health benefits out of, and not just any old fish, the deep sea fish that have the chemical ingredients, and the rice bran, and the shiitake lentin, and all these different parts of the diet. The Japanese have been very particularly courageous and far-thinking about knowing this old German philosopher that I studied, man is what he eats. And whether they read Feuerbach or just figured it out on their own, they have been the leaders in being able to chemically isolate the ingredients in these mushrooms, extract them. Now, they have the international patents, and they always say it's proprietary when you ask them. I understand that. It's good business. If you develop something and you figure something out and you want to be compensated, you know, you don't go around telling the whole world about it. So, you know, we're all big kids, we're all grown-ups, and competition is what makes the world go around.